After we'd moved into this house during the summer of 2007, my parents noted I'd undergone a significant personality change. I was suddenly nasty. I was aggressive. I was abusive to people who had never harmed me before, to my friends. Previously, I was just a goofy kid whom teachers didn't quite know how to talk to, but was otherwise considered very bright and pleasant to be around. I was no stranger to moving every other year, and this move had barely bothered me, so they knew it wasn't upset. It was late one night. My dad was away for work, and it was just me, my mother, little brother, and dog that week. For some reason, I couldn't help but feel like something was watching me, and sat up in bed to see a dark figure standing in the corner of my room, almost indiscernible at first glance. I didn't yell, didn't panic at first, because I thought I had to be dreaming. I wasn't special, and non special people don't do cool things like see ghosts. I tried to fall back asleep, but it was tricky, and I felt like I was being watched the rest of the night. The next day, I asked to sleep in another room, slightly more fearful now, but thinking I just needed a change of pace. It was a fluke, and by sleeping elsewhere, my brain would reset and I'd be fine. I hadn't just seen a ghost, only special people saw ghosts. My mother thought I was acting up for attention, but figured it wasn't the hill to die on and let me sleep elsewhere. So I did, and the damn thing followed me. It waited at the foot of the bed all night, staring me down as I tried to sleep. I was so exhausted from the lack of sleep the previous night, I did manage to drift off, but it was a restless sleep. I tried to envision myself surrounded by white light like the Tolkien elves, hoping it might repel the darkness. The third day, I sat at a table with a few friends, and their mothers and my own family. We'd just had dinner and were doling out the cinnamon rolls when I suddenly felt my whole body get heavy, like somebody added a 50-pound weight to my skull. I couldn't stop it. I slumped forward in my chair despite my grabbing at the back to stay upright. My eyes just about rolled back into my skull. Someone asked if I was okay. I couldn't see. I couldn't see, and yet I could. I suddenly saw a flat plane stretched out before me, and everything was grey. The dark figure stood right in front of me, and then it rushed me. It ran at me so fast, and I didn't know what to do. I couldn't do anything. I had to fight to pry my jaws apart, and I screamed. It was like the screaming released me, and I knocked my chair into the wall. I shot back so hard. I was sobbing and could hardly catch my breath, while everyone tried to figure out what was wrong. I told my mother what I saw. The thing was back and it tried to hurt me. I think this finally convinced her I wasn't crazy, that something was wrong, and I wasn't trying to get attention. I wasn't a crier. I hated being caught crying. After I was calmed down, she took her two friends upstairs with her to my room. She didn't tell me until several years later that her friends had seen it, had seen this dark presence in my room too, and could prove I wasn't lying, that I wasn't crazy. The dog often followed her around the house while she was doing chores, but he refused to go anywhere near my room. He growled at my room, hackles raised kind of growl. Even after we moved to a new house, my dog never wanted to stay long in my room again. I don't know if it was because he remembered the bad thing from before, or if something had been irreparably broken in me, or was now part of me. I couldn't walk into churches anymore without having sudden, unexplainable breakdowns. I would feel like hands were choking me. I'd struggle to breathe. I'd feel 100 emotions at once and start sobbing. Needless to say, I quit entering churches after more than a few bad experiences. We found a journal in my room a few months before I moved out for uni, full of crazy ramblings, written by something that said it was a monster, that my parents would kill me if they discovered I was no longer human, that it would have to hurt my family first to stay alive. I burned it immediately and tossed the remnants in the trash. The scariest part was that it was all in my handwriting, and I didn't remember writing any of it. My family still wonders to this day what it was. Germany is small, and so many new things get built on top of old things all the time. We lived close to Celtic tombs, had visited the old mounds and tall obelisks mounted on top of them. We lived next to a walled city. Buildings in the village could be dated back several centuries prior and were still inhabited by people today. Was our home on top of someone's grave? The weirdest coincidence of all was that the people who lived there before us had developed a reputation of being quite nasty as well. Had they always been nasty? Or had the same thing that haunted me, changed them too? This happened in the winter of 2015. For context, I had just flown back home to Germany for winter break from uni in America and naturally had plenty of jet lag, coupled with a natural inclination to not go to bed until 2 or 3 in the morning at the time, like an idiot. As was often my problem when flying, I sucked at fixing my jet lag and would often be on the wrong sleep schedule for about a week. Instead of combating this with melatonin, Benadryl, or hot milk, or literally any of the other thousands of methods to fall asleep, I decided listening to definitely not calm music would be the best way to lull myself to sleep. You know, like a fool. It was midnight, and like always, I was wide awake. I lay in the guest bed facing the wall, headphones in and my eyes closed, but otherwise coherent and nowhere close to drifting off. The door to the room was closed, but had enough of a gap beneath it. The bright light of the hallway light cast enough light to see where my suitcase was on the floor and so on. We kept it on for anyone at night who had unexpected bathroom needs, so I was used to it being lighter than average. While laying there, I felt a hard, bony finger jab my shoulder twice, like someone was trying to get my attention. Like a moron who was evidently way too comfortable in their own home. In the few seconds it took to roll over and face whoever needed me, not once did it occur to me that had one of my family entered the room to shake me awake, the door would not only be open, but the room well lit thanks to the hallway light being on instead of dim. As I turned, I saw a dark, humanoid silhouette standing over me, tall and thin and disproportionate. The kind of deep dark that stood out even in a poorly lit room. It loomed over the bed, and it felt like it was staring at me. Naturally, I yelled incoherently because I had no idea who or what it was. Just that something had gotten into the room without me knowing, and I had zero idea how much danger I was or was not in. I flung the blankets everywhere. I'm not sure if I was trying to hide or trying to get the figure tangled up instead, but it disappeared in my pinwheeling. I could barely sleep that night, too afraid of what it might do to me if it came back for me, and I was unable to react the next time. Come the morning, I told my family what had happened. My parents apologized and said, "Oh, sorry. Yeah, someone lives in that room. They always have. We're just not sure who. We didn't think they'd bother you, though." I was less than pleased by this revelation, but thankfully spent the rest of my winter break with no further visitors in the middle of the night. I would go on to see this same figure a few more times throughout my duration of uni, sticking its head in the door once while I was cuddling on the couch with my now ex, occasionally rummaging through my ex's and her roommates' backpacks, and kneeling beside my bed with its hands resting on the mattress, like it was praying for me. After a hasty move, I ended up living in the projects for a while bit, after moving as quickly as I could. Nothing was worse than the situation I was in. While I was living there, I met a girl. We hit it off and started dating. Before I knew it, we were in a serious relationship. Neither of us were a fan of where I lived, and one day she mentioned that her dad owned an apartment and a back house on the property was available. I made up a story for my landlord, and was able to break the lease without penalty. This back house turned out to be a really nice 2-bedroom unit. It had everything included, like a washer, dryer hookups, and my own parking spot that had a gate that I could manually open and close and lock with a key. This place quickly felt like home. One day, I went to a friend's house. He had another friend there, and they were at his computer watching some Faces of Death shit. I didn't want to get involved, but my curiosity got the best of me, and I saw a few videos that I really hoped were fake. I wasn't there too long, it was a little too much, so I left. That night, I began having one of the strangest, kind of terrifying recurring dreams. This went on for weeks. I'll do my best to describe everything. It starts in a very dimly lit room from a distance. At least I think it is. I'm seeing everything in that dream from a third-person perspective. I'm starting to see shapes in darkness. I'm starting to hear just like the mantra. It's extremely deep, has extreme bass, and I can feel it through my entire body as the volume increases. Visibility increases as the sound gets louder, and I can start to make something out. I'm extremely overwhelmed by the sound and the feeling, but I'm trying to focus. There's a woman that looks naked and flailing around. Everything is dark, but I can make out 2 figures. As I get closer and the sound gets even louder, it starts getting brighter, but only slightly. 2 figures become 4 as I'm able to see more, and I realize the woman is flailing because these beings each have a hold on one of her limbs. It looks like she's trying to free herself. She begins violently screaming, and the gets louder and heavier. It begins rattling my soul. I don't know how to describe it. A feeling I experienced in this dream, and this dream alone. She begins screaming even louder. It's clear this is in a very strange, ritualistic room, illuminated by several candles. As she screams, I start to drift closer. She's naked. She has what looks like mud all over her body. Something is wrong. She's not only trying to break free, but she's clearly in great pain. As I realize this, her stomach begins to grow like a sped-up pregnancy. She kicks and tries to rip her arms away, screaming louder and louder as she grows. When it looks like she's straight up full term and ready to pop, I drift closer. The noise gets even louder, and I start noticing adult-sized fingers dragging and poking out from the inside. I realize the men are no longer holding her limbs, but instead have her bound by chains, each one holding a chain. She stops fighting and screams even louder. The scream is piercing. The sound of the is getting deeper and overwhelmingly loud, and then it happens. 2 extremely dark grey hands tear through the woman's stomach, then quickly put its hand back in. I'm getting closer. A grey bald head starts rising out of the hole it just put in the woman's stomach, from the inside. This thing is rising out of her, its head cocked down. The is getting louder and darker, and I can't help to get the feeling that I'm in a lot of trouble. The figure rises. The woman stopped moving a long time ago, and this thing continues to slowly rise to the sound of the It's a grey figure, some kind of demon. I'm getting closer. I'm getting more terrified. When it's fully free, it's levitating over the body. I get pulled directly in front of this thing. Its eyes are closed, head cocked down. In an instant, it snaps its head up and opens its eyes. Its horrific, glowing yellow scares me so bad I wake up. This nightmare would keep me up for the next few weeks. My girlfriend started complaining of the feeling of cold hands on her feet at night, and something would pick on her at the night. Like she wasn't welcome. The day I proposed to her proved that she wasn't lying. I made plans to propose to my now wife. I asked permission and did everything old school. The day I planned to propose, everything was going wrong. My girlfriend's car suddenly had issues. It died on her 3 times in the same day. This put her in a bad mood. We got to our restaurant for dinner, and it turned out my reservation was booked for the exact time the damn place closes. I still hope someone got fired for that bullshit. Anyways, we leave, and I quickly find a decent place nearby on Yelp. When we got there, the food was good, but the place was cramped. There wasn't much space between chairs, so it was impossible for me to get down on one knee. Dinner's over. We get back to my place, and I can't wait another night. I'm proposing now. While we're not in the kitchen, I start telling her that I can no longer wait, give her a little speech, and get on one knee. She says yes. We're hugging for a while, then everything in my cupboard proceeds to fly out, as if the supports from all the shelves broke at the same time. It looked like an avalanche. It was loud, thunderous, and a bitch to clean up. The night I proposed was also the same night I told her I think I'm being followed. She would stay the night and complain about cold hands on her feet all the time. She assumed that was me while I was getting ready for work. I would just say, "You're tripping," and left it at that. The next few weeks she would say this. I would only have that dream when she was gone. My fiance's jewellery started disappearing. She started getting scratches. Things got bizarre. Not long after, things escalated to what the fuck status. I'm at my house alone, sleeping. I'm having the same dream, but everything is somehow more vivid, more real, more intense. This woman is screaming and screaming, and I'm closer than I've ever been before. I see the hands in the stomach, and I see the grey head force and rip its way out of her stomach. I'm much closer now. I'm being forced to watch everything. I see her stomach open, and there's blood everywhere. We're inside a wiggling line of live worms. Then this grey thing rockets out of her stomach and opens its eyes, locking eyes with me. It scares me so bad I woke up, but I wasn't ready for what happened next. I wake up from this dream like a straight-up jump scare. I wake up to blood-curdling screaming. I mentioned before that I have my own parking spot. Like I said before, this was a back house, and that parking lot was right next to the back house, so I had to. The property was fenced in. There was a metal gate that manually opened and closed. I was the only one with a key besides the landlord. The entrance to the spot was from an alley. At night, it was dark and spooky, and sometimes I would be lazy about locking the gate. I snap out of this dream, woken up by fear. Before I catch my breath, my heart skips a beat when I start hearing screaming. I mean screaming. It's extremely loud. I can hear the labour between each breath. I froze for a few seconds. The noise is coming from right outside my window on the alley side. But it doesn't sound like it's in the alley. It sounds like it's right outside my window, and it dawns on me that I didn't lock the door. I just gave some lunatic the perfect place to bring someone. I have a Wish app. I buy stupid shit like a machine that looks like a samurai sword. So what? I don't own a gun. This is all I have to protect myself, and hopefully it's enough for what I'm about to do. This screaming is loud. It's terrifying. Someone needs help. I'm on my way. I turn on the light in my room. My dog is looking out the window. She's going ballistic, but she's a chihuahua, so she has to sit this one out. I open my back door. The screaming continues. I turn the porch light on, and right when I'm about to jump off my porch, I look, and there was nothing there. In fact, from where I'm standing, the scream is coming from my room. I'm like, what? And run inside. All of this screaming is really overwhelming and disorienting. I ran back to my room. The screams are still loud and piercing, and I don't know what to do. There's no one outside and no one inside. What is this? Where is this noise coming from? My dog is on my bed growling, but now she looks scared. She's not in attack mode. She's in I'm right where you've made me mode. Completely scared. In the next few seconds, I decide to try to follow the screams. As I get closer, I realise this is not coming from outside. It's not coming from the window. The sound is close to the wall, but also it's coming from underneath my bed. I'm not that scared. I'm more like, what? How? The floors in my room were tile. My bed was on a metal frame with wheels. I grab the bed and easily pull it away from the wall. The screaming intensified, but after another few seconds, it just stopped. All of this happened in maybe 30 seconds. After that, everything just stopped. As mysteriously as the thing arrived, it vanished. When I was around 8, my dad moved us from Carson to a house in San Pedro. We lived there for about 9 years. During the first few years, it was a normal house. Nothing crossed our mind as being haunted. Soon, things changed, and I think I know why. My parents divorced when I was 5 or 6. My mum left so fast she didn't even show up to court when I came to custody. She disappeared for a while, then showed up again when I was 10. She found herself a rich husband and pretty much tried to buy our affection back. Anyways, she lived with this guy in Albuquerque, New Mexico. He had 4 kids. 3 were old enough to live on their own, and 1 still lived with him. After my mom came back into the picture for a while, my dad ended up trusting her and letting us, my older brother and I, fly out during Easter, winter, and summer break. It gave him a break and a chance for us to catch up with our mom. So the first year of this arrangement, we spent the time just getting to know our new stepdad and stepbrother. The second year, we all started opening up to each other. Our stepbrother enjoyed trying to spook us out all the time, telling us about La Llorona and other folklores. He spent a lot of time talking about hell and the devil. I don't want to spend too much time on this. I want to say right now that I'm in no way a religious person. I don't know what I am. I have a lot of questions. So after all this devil and ghost talk, we went to Target with my mom. All 3 of us. While we're there, our stepbrother finds a Ouija board and convinces my mom to buy it. She actually said, "Oh, we used to play with them when we were little." I didn't know exactly what it was at the time, but when I did question why the hell Target sold those, we get this thing back to my mom's house and wait until night to take it out. And when my stepbrother explains how it works, I'm not exactly thrilled. I was scared easily then. My brothers started messing with this thing. Not me, but I didn't leave either. I just sat and watched. Nothing happened. Nothing ever happened, but we ended up taking the thing back to California with us, where my brother and I would end up playing with it a few times. Still, nothing happened. We stashed it in a closet under a pile of stuff so our dad wouldn't find it because we knew he'd flip out. Then we kind of just forgot about it. Months go by and it's summer break and time to visit our mom again. When we left, our dad hadn't had our bedroom remodeled and he found the board. Instantly destroyed it, ripped it up and threw it away. He called our mom, gave her a ration of shit for buying it, then yelled at both of us for keeping it. A few weeks later, he started telling us that at night that he was clearly hearing footsteps going up and down the stairs. I didn't know what to think when I heard that. When summer was over, we came home and never heard of it ourselves. Then, one weekend, our cousins visit, Melissa and Paul. While they were here, they slept in the living room downstairs from us. The first night they're there, something strange happened. My dad was woken up by a woman in a white gown walking into his room. Her hair was dark, extremely long and covering her face. When she made it, she closed the door behind her, placed her hands under her long hair that was covering her face, just enough to see the floor as she started hunching over. She started scanning the floor as if she was looking for something. She made it around the room, around the side of the bed, and sat on his bed directly next to him. He said he sat up and said, "Who the fuck are you?" She didn't flinch, but instead got up and started strangely searching the floor again, then made her way out of the room. The second the door was closed, he thought of us and immediately darted for the door. He was a split second too late and it shut. He grabbed the handle to open the door, but it was locked, so it delayed him a few seconds from getting out. Our room was directly across from his, so he didn't hesitate and charged in, walking us up. He immediately turned on our lights, searched our room and the back room and our closet. Nothing was there. He told us to lock the door and not to open it until he hears us. He searches around and finds nothing, so he thinks it was our cousin Melissa playing a weird prank. He started to yell at her, but immediately realised that she wasn't wearing a gown. She was wearing raider sweats. The next day, a firework was lit in our house when it was empty. I ultimately got in trouble for it, but it wasn't me. As that school year continued, the demeanour of my brother changed, and he became so defiant with my dad. He couldn't take it anymore and let him go stay with our mom. Things immediately changed in the house. I'm home alone one Sunday watching football, and I start hearing shuffling coming from our computer from down the hall. The closet opening and closing, and things falling off of the desk. I went to check it out, thinking one of our dogs was stuck back there, reaching to grab the handle, and something pounded on the door. It was extremely loud and felt like some kind of a sonic boom. A wave of complete coldness shot through my entire body, and next thing I know, I'm freezing. It was a hot, sunny day. As soon as that happened, I turned around and just walked away, and went back to watching football with the front door open. When my dad got home, he checked out the room, and it was perfectly untouched. That night, I'm laying in bed trying to sleep, and the room to my door just opens. My dad would randomly check on me from time to time, not every night, but sometimes he would just to let me know, hey, if you're up, I'm up, so don't be scared if you hear things. When it was him, I could see him and hear him. Not this time, pure darkness and silence. I'm staring at the door and it's cracked a few inches. Suddenly, it swings open to about a foot, as if someone was leaning in to check on me or look at me, but it's pure and utter darkness. I stare and stare, and I'm not getting out of bed in fear of what is there. I just cover my head and close my eyes, listening for movement until I finally go to sleep. This happens a few nights in a row until I lock the door. It stopped it from opening. The next few nights, I would see the doorknob slowly jiggling in the moonlight, like something is definitely trying to make its way in, but extremely quietly. I was able to get decent sleep for a few days. I had a Machiavelli CD in a CD player that I hardly used anymore. Don Illuminati, The 7-Day Theory. If you're familiar with the album, you'd know the song Blasphemy. It has an intro that's a slowed down speech from what sounds like Bible verses, and by slowing it down, it sounds devilishly evil. I woke up to that on my CD player at 3 a.m. on the dot. The volume was turned all the way up. This was one of those crazy Costco extreme bass systems. I wake up to this. It's so loud and so disorienting I can't see. I can't find the switch, and I'm fumbling trying to hit buttons on the CD player and nothing is working. I'm trying to turn the volume down, and while watching the volume go from 50 down to 25, then start spiking again. I couldn't turn it off. I ripped the cables out of the receiver and finally got it to stop and the lights turned on in my room. I turn around and my dad is staring at me extremely angry, but doesn't have an expression. He just closes the door. The door was locked, and when I looked, it's still locked. That did just happen, right? I'm freaking out. I ended up sleeping with my lights on for a while. It got worse. Soon, I could hear the footsteps on the stairs at night. After a while, I couldn't handle the lights on to sleep anymore, and I opted for a black light. Soon, I'm woken up by the doorknob jiggling again, then it stops. Then I hear a noise from my closet. It has no folding sliding doors. They were very stiff and needed force to open and close each side. When you open it, the right side was a doorway into what we called the secret room. The left side was nothing, but on the floor there was a 45-degree slant from the floor to the left wall. Stairs were underneath, so it needed room for that ceiling. Back to the closet. The doorknob stops, but when I start to calm down, the right closet door opens. Like I said, this is not easy to do. Once it opened, I sat and watched the rest of it slowly but surely slide open. Soon, the left side pops open. I'm at an angle where I can clearly see nothing is there. There's a window directly behind that walkway. I should have been able to see a silhouette if someone was there, but there wasn't, and I continued to watch the left door slowly open completely. I did what I always did, covered up and slept. Later, I got by tying the closet doors shut. Things calmed down for a while. I decided to make the secret room my room and just sleep on the futon that's in there. I pinned the blindfold one closet doors so they would move around, and I continued to lock the door of my room at night. A few months go by, and I'm almost convinced this is over. I haven't heard or seen anything strange for a while. Then as soon as I'm comfortable, I wake up my doorknob jiggling again. My heart sank because I immediately realised that I didn't lock the door, so I jumped up and went into action. I moved slowly and silently to the door. My door has one of those lever handles. I'm watching this thing go up and down, and the more it rises, the more my heart sinks. With this new habit of locking my door, I locked myself out a few times and didn't do the right thing when I came to unlocking it. I was young and dumb. When the door's unlocked, if you lift the lever upward just about an inch, it will be plenty high enough to open my door. It's only like that when you lift it. As I'm thinking, please don't go any higher, it was like it read my mind and was using all of its energy to do just that, getting higher and higher. While it's doing this, I think I have to lock the door, but how? Well, from me locking myself out and getting in myself, that meant I had an unorthodox way of locking it from whatever damage I did. You have to lift up and twist right before it's about to open. I timed it and did just that. I grabbed the handle, lifted with it and twisted, leaned in to make sure it was closed, then stepped back. Violently jiggling and pounding continued for about 20 seconds. I screamed for my dad and nothing. I screamed and screamed and screamed. Nothing. He showed up way later, but somehow didn't hear anything. I lived like this for years. We eventually moved, and it stopped for a little bit. This was when I and my brother was gone. My dad was having the walls painted that led up to the stairs from me constantly dragging my hands from riding a skateboard deck down the stairs when he wasn't around. My dad's friend saw the job and the requires moving the handrail on the wall that ran the entire length of the stairs, around 20. So I'm leaving my room and I'm talking to my dad. He's in his room. I decide to sit at the top of the stairs, and when we're done talking, I gotta get up. The second my butt leaves the floor, I feel two hands push me in the back, and I went tumbling down. I'm doing front flips and I'm rapidly reaching the bottom. I didn't want to reach the bottom, so I reach out and grab the handrail that was luckily laying on the floor. I was fine. My dad saw me and wondered what I was thinking when I got up from sitting. I'm accusing him of pushing me, and my dad's friend is sitting there, baffled from what he just saw. I live in San Pedro, California. I've had several experiences in my life. The first time, actually the first few times, was at my grandma's house. In 1994, at the time, it was about a year after my parents divorced. I was around 6 years old, and my older brother was 8. My dad decided to start dating again, so that meant my brother and I were going to spend the night with our grandmas here and there. We loved going to her house. We had a lot of fun every time we visited. We just never stayed the night before this. Her house is up a hill near Bogdanovich Park. From the front of her house, it looked like a single-story home, but if you're in the back, you would see that there's a second level that goes down. When facing the front of the house, the front door would be on the front left corner of the house, which would be to your right. When you walk in, you could go straight to a set of stairs that led to her den, a nice room that was always off limits. Kind of like how the mom was in that movie Drop Dead Fred. It was important to her that this room was always clean and untouched. She would be angry if we even walked through to get to the kitchen. This house had a strange layout. So when you walked in and turned left, instead of going down those steps, you would enter a foyer that had a piano. When you entered this room, you could either turn right and go up another set of stairs leading to all of the bedrooms, or you could go straight, which would lead to a garage door or yet another set of stairs that led to the actual living room. Yes, two separate sets of stairs going down to the same level. Hopefully that makes sense. When my older brother and I were dropped off, it was a weekend. We had already eaten dinner. The sun was going down and my grandma was relaxing watching TV, so we joined her. At around 10, she decided it was our bedtime. She actually said, "Hey, it's 10. You guys should probably go to sleep. I'm going to stay up and watch Murder, She Wrote, a show that she was addicted to." Whenever we were at her house, we would race to the top of the house, running and pushing each other the entire race up the stairs. It wasn't much of a climb, but we were always trying to compete with each other, even though he won every time. This night would be different. When we were told to go to bed, we both turned and looked at each other with the same thing in our mind: run. He was right next to the door that led to the stairs. I was across the room getting up from the couch. He was getting a little head start, so I decided the only way to win was to run and try to tackle or trip him while going up the stairs. I made an attempt. It didn't work. He tied up a little bit, but it didn't take much for him to push me off. When he broke free, he turned to run up the second set of stairs, but stopped abruptly. I pay no attention and keep my head down while I attempt to run past him. Something happened. I was pulled back by the collar of my shirt, almost violently. I'm on the ground and look up, and to my surprise, it was my brother. I didn't know why he did that. I just figured he accidentally got way too rough, brushed it off, and did everything I could to get back on my feet to win the race. My brother screams, "No!" I look at him, then finally look up at the direction I was going. There was a very large man standing at the top of the stairs. It reminded me of the Grim Reaper. He had a dark hooded cloak, dark grey and very worn. He had long white braids or ties hanging down, each shoulder that went down past his waist. The cloak was hanging to the floor and his sleeves were hanging past his hands. He had his hood on, and all I could see was a brown face from the nose down. Anything above that was almost pitch black. As much as I couldn't see features any higher, I could see abnormally large eyes glaring at me. We locked eyes, and I froze for a few seconds until my brother pulled me away. We ran to my grandma. She didn't believe a word we said. She looked around herself without any fear, and nothing happened. The next morning, after we got home, we pleaded to our dad to not leave us there again. We told him what happened. I looked concerned but never questioned us and said okay. Maybe he thought we were making this up because he went on a date and wasn't ready for that. I don't know. He never tried to talk us out of it. About 2 years later, my brother made Little League All-Stars. They were so good, they had to travel somewhere to play. My dad decided it would be best for me to stay with my grandma for that weekend while they went and did their thing. I didn't argue and wasn't into baseball yet, so I was totally fine with it. For a while, I completely forgot what happened. It didn't come back to me until I was there, dropped off, no turning back. To my relief, nothing happened the first night, and I honestly started to question if I imagined the whole thing. My brother and I never spoke about it, but at the same time, my dad did what we asked and never left us there again, until this day. This time I'm alone, or feel that way without my older brother. The second night, I watched a Dodgers game with my grandma. She was an avid fan. This game went into extra innings, and once that clock hit 10, she did the same thing. Time for bed. I'll be up after the game. This time I begged to sleep in her room. We went back and forth about it, but she eventually gave in. Okay, go. I should be up there soon. I didn't want to go, but I knew I had no choice. I know she's not worried, and I know she would have said there's nothing there. I slowly go up the steps one by one, praying this thing wouldn't be there, and trying to convince myself that my mind made this whole thing up. Once I was up the first set of stairs, I inched my way to the corner and tried to peek, and thank God, nothing is there. Now I just have to make it up the stairs and go to the first door on the right, and I'll line up in her room. I cautiously climb and get 2 steps from the top, thinking I'm home free, but something compelled me to look left first, down the corner. The thought of it was dreadful, but something inside me was telling me you have to look. I have to look. He stood at the very end of the hallway, facing the open door of the room that my brother and I usually slept in. Fear took over my body, and I found myself frozen again. I can't move. I'm leaning around this corner, staring at every detail. Something was definitely different about him. Instead of being tall and built, he was very frail, and his posture was gone, and he was hunched over. So much his long hair was no longer resting on him. It was dangling all away from him, straight down, almost touching the ground from being hunched over so far. He seemed more interested in that room than me, and when I realized that I was able to control myself and get out of view before it noticed me if it didn't already, I thought to myself that if I can get in her room and close the door, I'll be safe from this thing. I speak one more time, and he's still facing the room. I step back one more time to mentally prepare for this. After a few seconds, I was like, no, now or never, and I went for it. But instead of rushing in like I wanted to, I tried to take one big step up before slowly tipping in. While I'm taking this big step, 2 stairs and as far as I can reach, I look down the hall one last time. It was facing me with a blank stare. I bolted. I ran to my grandma. She got annoyed, looks around the house. Nothing. I'm so scared I won't let her leave and convince her to finish watching the game in her room, and she did. I woke up in the middle of the night in complete fear. I couldn't remember when or how I fell asleep, and for some reason that scared me. The TV was still on. My grandma was knocked out while snoring. I start to calm down, and I'm getting ready to close my eyes again, but something once again gave me a feeling that I needed to look towards the door of the room, and I did. He was there again, big and tall again, no longer frail. This time, no hood, and I could see his details even more, and he still had insanely large eyes. At that point, I thought maybe he couldn't come into this room. I laid there for about 20 minutes and he never moved, so I covered my head and somehow went back to sleep. I brought it up to my dad and I didn't stay the night there for years. Fast forward 15 years. I'm 22/23. My grandma's still around. I'm living on my own. My dad went through hard times and lived with my grandma until he had a stroke and ended up in a convalescent home. All of his belongings were left at her house. My dad was a movie fanatic, I guess you could say. He had so many, he managed to fill up most of the upstairs hallway walls with DVDs. I did a lot to help him out, including switching out movies for him. He would give me a list of movies he wanted from the hallway, and I would grab them and leave the stack of recently watched movies. I only did this during the day. I still refused to be there at night. But one night, my whole family went out to dinner. I picked up my grandma, picked up my dad. We ate, left. It turned out to be quicker for me to drop off my grandma first, then my dad on my way home. I dropped off my grandma, get my dad where he needs to be, get him to his room, then he says, "Oh, I forgot to ask you earlier. Can you please switch out movies for me? I know you don't want to go at night, but please? I need something to help me go sleep, and I've watched these movies way too many times." I just say, "Fuck, okay." I constantly thought about her house and what I saw when I was younger. It never left my mind. I would think now that I'm older, I wanted to see what it wanted from me. I always thought it had some kind of interest in me for some reason. I told myself, this is it. Here's my chance if it happens. I make it to her house and pull up into the driveway. I don't have a key to her house, just the garage door opener. That's how my grandma wanted it. I don't know. I open the garage, walk in, and open the door that leads to the foyer. The house is pitch black. I hear my grandma watching TV while living downstairs. The door to the living room was closed, but I can see lights under the door. I didn't want to bother her and the TV was so loud, I knew she didn't notice me. So I proceeded to walk toward the stairs going up to the hallway full of movies. Something strange was happening. No lights would turn on when I flipped switches, and even the lights with the twist switch wouldn't turn on either. My grandma was at the age where going up all those stairs was too much, so she set up her living room like a little studio. She had her kitchen and bathroom right there. Even though the den area was twice the size of the living room, she chose to be in the smaller room. My first thought was maybe since she doesn't go upstairs, that she turned off all power to the upper level. I don't know why I thought that, but I did. So no lights are working. I'm questioning how my grandma managed to make it downstairs in that kind of darkness, but she did. She was fine. I need to worry about what's going on now. This was when those Nokia brick phones were popular. No phone had flashes, cameras, or flashlights. I was stuck using the light of my screen turned to its brightest setting. It was actually very bright, enough to see everything in front of me. I made my way up the stairs and down to the end of the hallway where I knew for certain the movies he wanted were. So far, so good. Nothing strange is happening except that none of the light switches work up here. I even tried the switches in the adjacent rooms. Still nothing. I'm not liking this darkness. I'm not afraid of the dark, but it was different here. I feared that house. I'm trying to hurry. I only have a few movies left, and I know exactly where they are. I'm thinking I'll be out in no time. I dodged a bullet. Then, I hear something shuffle behind me. I turn around and don't see any, but this swiveling chair that's been sitting in the middle of the hallway was just coming to a slow stop, like it was just spinning. Maybe I hit it somehow. I'm not near it, but maybe I did earlier. It has some weight to it. It's an upholstered chair. Maybe I hit it and it kept its momentum. I ignore and grab the last DVD. I was walking so fast to get out, I almost started to run. When I made it to the door to the garage, I heard the same shuffle coming from behind me. I want to ignore it. I'm not curious anymore. I'm spooked. While I'm walking in the garage and about to close the door behind me, I use my phone to look inside one last time. From the stairs, I see a pitch black figure, just a black silhouette. I want to say it was someone with a hood on, but it wasn't. It was a black figure cleaning out looking at me. Even though I was shining a light directly at it, there was no face. It was total darkness. I pause because I'm thinking about waiting. This thing is up a step or two, leaning out, and it's still not taller than me. I'm 5'9". I'm thinking, is this some kid? But why can't I see a face? All this is going through my head in the next few seconds while we're having a little stare-off. I say Sydney, the name of my little cousin. She wouldn't be there alone. She counted on getting there by herself. I don't even know why I thought it might be her, but when I said her name, it pulled itself back and out of sight so fast. I freaked out and ran out of that house as fast as I could, got in my car and took off. At first, all I could think about was how I let myself down. Something happened and I bitched out big time. After a few minutes, I started to ask myself, what was that thing? That's definitely what you saw before. That had to have been a person, and convinced myself it had to be. Then I thought, holy shit, you just ran out of Grandma's house and left her alone with someone in it. I had to force myself to turn around, drive back up the hill, and do a walkthrough. If someone was there and something happened, my life would be ruined. Completely empty, and this time all of the lights are fully functional. I left and stayed away for 2 more years, at least during the night. A few years go by. My dad is still in the home trying to recover from his stroke. My grandma was just placed in a nursing home. I'm living in Point Fermin with my buddy Zach. One day, my aunt called me and asked me if I wanted to move into my grandma's house, since no one is there now. My dad's struggle was with drugs, and one of her fears was that one of his friends would come in and try to squat in her house and take it over. I told her I was surprised she's asking me, because she was just mentioning how her daughter was planning to move on her own. Her response was, I asked her first. But she said, hell no, she's terrified of that house. That was interesting to me because we never had discussions like that about the house. It wasn't just me that was scared of it. I took the offer. I wasn't struggling by any means, but free rent was appealing to me. Saving money sounded good to me. The first week, nothing happened. My aunts made it clear that my grandma wasn't coming back to the house, so I could treat the place like my own. Sweet. My first project was to turn this den into the living room. It had pink carpets, floral couches. It was hideous to me. I had the carpets replaced, got new couches, then slowly started on fixing up the house. I knew plans were to sell it, so I thought the least I could do was slowly fix this place up for her, since I'm not paying rent. Painting and working construction under the table were my first jobs, so I knew I could easily update the house a little. Things were going smoothly. I was starting to feel comfortable there. It was a beautiful house in a beautiful location. Because of the view, I'd catch myself hanging out in the backyard most of the time. I couldn't be happier that my cousin turned down this opportunity. So things are good the first week. And I started noticing strange things happening. At night, I lock the door of my room when I sleep, even to this day. That's a story for another time. So every night, I've been locking the door to my room. By the way, I took over my grandma's room. As much as I said things were fine, I still felt something was off whenever I made it down the hallway, and the back rooms at the end of the hall no matter the time, day or night. So every morning, I would wake up to the door of my room being completely open. With the carpet in that room, it's not exactly possible for the wind to just push it over. The door rubbed on the carpet. I don't know why, but it took me a week to realise that ever since night one. My door has been open and the handle locked. I think I found out by locking myself out one morning. Once I noticed, that night, I leaned a skateboard against the door, and the next morning, sure enough, it was wide open and the skateboard would be lying on the floor. Two skateboards, same thing. I put a chair in the way and the chair was moved. I'm starting to freak out. I start calling friends over. A successful bribe of beer and a barbecue would help, but by the end of the day, I would still be alone in this house. After a while, I convinced myself that this has to be the wind, somehow. I just wanted to be the explanation, because once again, I find myself not ready to deal with this. Things got weirder. While I was sleeping, there were a few nights that I would get woken up to laughing and shouting, and what sounded like cars shuffling. Definitely people conversing directly below me in the den area. The first night it happened, I thought my friends showed up drunk and made themselves at home. They never did that before, but this is what I had hoped and really thought. I got really mad about the noise. I had to be up at 5 a.m. for work and it's 2 or 3 in the morning. I got up to kick everyone out, but the second I opened the door to my room, the noise completely stopped. In fact, the entire house is pitch black. The first time, I thought I had to be dreaming, but it kept happening, and the door of my room kept opening. One night, I had a few friends over, and I told them what was going on. I pretty much just got laughed at. No one believed anything I said. A few days after this happened, I was at home, off of work, and my friend Dave, one of the people there that night, was at my front door. He showed up with some friends. Immediately, he brought up what I told him the other night, and he brought friends to investigate. One of them, Kevin, didn't want to join them. I thought that was odd. It was daytime, but who knows? I told them to check it out and I'll stay down with Kevin. They go up, and Kevin and I start catching up. About 30 minutes go by, and we're both wondering what they were doing. So I said, let's go see what they're getting into. Kevin says, okay, I'll follow you. We go up the first set of stairs, turn right, and just when I'm about to walk into the foyer, one of my skateboards falls into my path. At the time, I had 5 all lined up next to each other. They were in the same position for days. So one skateboard falls in my path, then stops. I'm not slowing down. I'm just planning to step over it. But when I start stepping over it, the second board falls and stops right where I was going to step. I go for a further step, and the next one falls and stops. Then the fourth, and before I know it, I turned a big step into a jump to clear all 5 skateboards. Kevin immediately accuses me of pranking him and asks me how I did that. I told him that that wasn't me, and what's weird is that I have super Swiss bearings on all my skateboards, which mean they roll excellently, and the floors are hardwood in the foyer. Every time I tried to get one of my boards to fell the same way, it would slide and then roll halfway across the room, not stop like they all did. Kevin left and never came back. That was enough for him. Dave and the other 2 guys didn't believe why he left at first, until he called him to ask where the hell he went. Everything that happened up to that point I could handle. Then came footsteps at night, mostly on the roof. For 2 months I lived in the active house and I was getting used to all of it. I gave up on locking the door of my room before bed. I would lay in bed and try to listen to these conversations, see if they made any sense, maybe hear a name. Nothing. I never saw whatever I saw when I was little. Maybe my 3rd month with my grandma passed away. She lost a long battle. One night, I'm watching TV in the den. It's a little past midnight. And now I'm starting to get tired. I'm starting to zone out a little bit until I hear a woman frantically yelling. I mean, going irate. I hear my name and, "How could you?" From the old living room, I lean over the arm of the couch to look in that direction, and I'm in complete shock. I'm watching my grandma that just died, yelling and looking angry. She was so upset that I changed her house. She's yelling and walking towards me, and I'm frozen. I can't move. She's quickly walking from the living room, through the kitchen, through the dining room, and right when she's about to walk in the den, I break myself free from this stranglehold, fear, and jump up and immediately try to create some distance between us. While I was getting up, she almost walked right into me, and that caused me to jump back and take a few steps back. But when I got my footing, I looked up to focus on her better, and she wasn't there anymore. I was standing in an empty room. I thought that it had to be sleep paralysis, but when I rewound what I was watching, it was exactly what I saw when this was happening. After this, I started to lose it a little. I would constantly hear noises from someone or something on the opposite side of the house. Some days I'd catch myself trying to catch something that I knew wasn't there. I stayed there until the house was sold, maybe a total of 4 months. Later on, I found out why my dad never argued when we didn't want to go to her house. Turns out, when they were younger, they shared the room I found that thing looking into. My uncle woke up to something sitting on his chest. He described it as a troll. He was frozen in fear and did everything not to move. He locked eyes with it, and while he maintained eye contact, he reached up to turn the light on his nightstand. The instant he turned the light on, it looked like the night back and then ran into their closet. While this happened, his scream woke up my dad. He didn't see anything, but he did see all of the clothes on hangers swinging back and forth. He got up, moved all of the clothes aside, and there was nothing there. I was also told that a lot of houses on that hill were built on Indian burial grounds. So it makes me think the guy I thought was a Grim Reaper was actually a ghost of a Native American. There's one big thing I forgot to add. During the time I was living at my grandma's house, I was doing some work in my room. I had a friend coming over and I told him just to walk in through the garage since it was open. This was before I rearranged the den. The sun was starting to set. My friend walks in and doesn't even say hi. He just says, "I thought it was just you living here." I look at him puzzled and said, "It is." He asked me, "Then who's the guy sitting on the chair downstairs? He's just sitting in the dark, staring at nothing." I panicked. I had the garage open all day. Someone could have made themselves at home. I run downstairs. He follows, realizing no one should be there. We check the house and no one was there. I say, "Really? You're fucking with me." He says, "No, I saw him clear as day." He began describing him, then stopped and pointed at a picture and said, "Wait, that's him. That's the guy I saw." "No, that guy died when I was 5. That's my grandpa."